Good morning, dear colleagues. I'd like to welcome you most cordially to the Karl-Benz Arena here in Stuttgart. Welcome to the annual press conference of Daimler AG. Before making some housekeeping remarks, I'd like to make three statements regarding the affairs of the recent days. I'd like to express my explicit regret that the studies were done by the EUGT, the studies commissioned by the EUGT. I know, and I'm speaking on behalf not only of the gentlemen who are represented here, but I also speak on behalf of all the colleagues of Daimler AG, that the way the EUGT proceeded runs counter to our ethical principles, and we condemn it deeply. As was said yesterday, Daimler AG decided to release the employee of Daimler AG who was in charge of these studies, to release him of all his duties. I can very well imagine that you have many questions about what happened. However, investigations have only just begun, and we also have to rely on external help. So far, we do not have any conclusive findings, which is quite logical because investigation started only last Saturday. So please bear with us if I ask you to understand that we will not answer any questions regarding this matter. However, I can assure you that we will do whatever is possible in order to prevent something like this from happening again. Now, it's a bit difficult to move on to the housekeeping remarks. However, let me tell you that we again offer simultaneous translation: German channel 1, English channel 2, Chinese channel 3. In the press center next door, you can see a TV broadcast, also in these three languages. The press conference will end at about 11 a.m. We will proceed as follows. Dieter Zetsche, Chairman of the Board of Management of Daimler AG and Head of Mercedes-Benz Cars, and Bodo Ueber, Member of the Board of Management and Finance and Controlling and Daimler Financial Services, will present an overview of the business performance and an outlook. After that, Martin Daum, Head of Daimler Trucks and Buses, will answer any questions you may have about trucks. You can ask your questions either in German or English. The answer will always be given in German and will be translated into either English or Chinese. If you wish to ask a question, please press the button on the microphone in front of you in order to activate it. And it would be very kind if you could briefly introduce yourself and tell us who you work with. After you're finished with your contribution, please deactivate your microphone. The press kit will be made available to you, as well as some more information after the press conference. And it would be very kind indeed if you could mute or switch off your mobile phones. If you have any further questions, of course, we will be delighted to answer them after the press conference. And with this, I'd like to hand over to Dr. Dieter Zetsche, Chairman of the Board of Management and Head of Mercedes-Benz Cars. Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to reinforce what Jörg Howe said. Such methods are in contrast to our values at Daimler. We will completely clean up these processes. I regret this all the more as the employees of Daimler truly have reason to be proud of our company, because they have once again succeeded in breaking the record they set in the previous year. I would therefore like to start by thanking all of our colleagues for their outstanding performance last year, and also for the willingness and enthusiasm with which they are not only accepting, but also actively promoting the transformation of our company. This annual press conference will focus on our success and our process of transformation at Daimler. First, I'd like to discuss Daimler's key highlights in 2017. Mercedes-Benz Cars remains on course for profitable growth. We sold almost 2.4 million cars in 2017, 8% more than in the previous year. This growth was primarily driven by the new E-Class and our SUVs. The new S-Class generated additional sales momentum in the second half of the year. Mercedes-Benz sold more vehicles than the direct competitors in 2017. 2017, but that's not all. We also grew faster than our rivals, with retail sales up by 10%. In other words, we are still expanding our leading position in the premium segment. To be specific, we are 10 and more than 20% respectively ahead of our two main competitors. One crucial reason for that is our success in China. Sales of Mercedes-Benz vehicles in China rose by 28% to 595,000 units in 2017. This success is the result of our hard work during the past few years. For example, we've aligned our products with the requirements of Chinese customers, substantially expanded our local production, and optimized our sales organization. This has enabled us to take a major step forward in the world's biggest automotive market. Smart was also very popular in China in 2017. The brand's sales in that country increased by 7%. Smart sold 136,000 vehicles all over the world in 2017. At 471,000 units, sales of Daimler trucks were significantly higher than in the previous year and also much higher than we expected at the beginning of 2017. With little support from the markets, this is a truly remarkable result. The sales increase was driven by positive developments in the NAFTA region, where sales rose by 13%. Daimler trucks also grew in Europe by 3%. Sales in Latin America were up 11% from the prior year, and sales in Asia increased by 18%. Sales in Japan were slightly lower than in the previous year, but sales in Indonesia, India, and the Middle East were significantly higher. We were able to consolidate or extend our already strong positions in nearly all markets. We remain the undisputed market leader for medium and heavy-duty trucks in NAFTA and Europe, and we have a 28% market share in Brazil. In order to benefit from the increased demand that we expect to see in the medium term, we will invest around 600 million euros in our products, plants, and digital services in Brazil over the next 5 years. Fuso's market share in Japan was nearly 20% last year. In India, Bharat succeeded in increasing its market share to more than 9%. With the efficiency measures we've introduced, particularly at Mercedes-Benz trucks, there is a good chance to achieve our target level also in terms of profitability. Mercedes-Benz vans achieved strong growth once again in 2017, with all model series contributing to the division's fourth consecutive record year. More than 200,000 Sprinter vans were sold in the final year of the model cycle, more than ever before. Sales of the V2 increased by 21%, while Citan sales rose by 5%. V-Class sales were up 22%. The X-Class, the world's first pickup built by a premium manufacturer, got off to a great start after its launch at the end of the year. In 2017, we also showed how we plan to transform Mercedes-Benz vans from a van manufacturer into a supplier of system solutions. In the future, it will offer everything from ride-sharing services to new delivery systems that use vans and drones. Business development at Daimler Buses received a major boost from the improved economic situation in Latin America. In Turkey, on the other hand, the situation remained problematic. All in all, we sold 28,700 buses and chassis last year, 9% more than in 2016. Our product offensive also continued in 2017. With our new hybrid city bus, we're offering a solution that will help make local public transport even more efficient. We also plan to introduce 2 new coaches in order to continue benefiting from the growing long-distance bus market. In addition, our new Omni Plus On brand now brings together all bus-related digital services. Daimler Financial Services has been setting new records for years now, and 2017 was no exception. New business increased by 14% to 70.7 billion euros, and contract volume rose by 6% to nearly 140 billion euros. We now lease or finance half of all the vehicles we sell. We are also increasingly offering the right insurance packages to go with them. In fact, our insurance brokerage volume grew by 20% last year. We recently introduced a new telematics insurance policy whose rates are determined by individual driving styles. This is a system that rewards safe driving. Meanwhile, mobility services are part of the core business of DFS. The pilot project for Car2Go was launched around 9 years ago. Today, we offer a whole range of digital services, including everything from flexible car sharing to an app-based taxi service and mobile ticketing solutions for public and private transport companies. Almost 18 million people in more than 100 cities all over the world now use these services from Daimler. That translates into more than twice as many customers as we had in 2016. We are still extending our leadership in this area. I'd now like to give you an overview of the most important figures for the financial year 2017. Group revenue increased by 7% to 164.3 billion euros. This increase was higher than we had anticipated at the beginning of the year, 7% and more. Group EBIT totaled 14.7 billion last year, an increase of 14%, which means that our profit grew at twice the rate of revenue. In other words, we are growing very profitably indeed. We've also achieved our return on sales target of 9% for the automotive business. The group's net profit totaled 10.9 billion last year, and earnings per share amounted to €9.84. On the basis of these figures, the Board of Management and the Supervisory Board will propose a dividend of €3.65 per share at the annual shareholders' meetings. This means we will pay out total dividends of €3.9 billion to our shareholders. Our employees will also benefit from our good business development. Every eligible employee of Daimler AG will receive a profit-sharing payout of €5,700 this year. I'd now like to hand over to Bodo Uber, who will give you further details of our business results and present the development of the individual divisions. Bodo.
Thank you, Dieter. Ladies and gentlemen, let me now give you some more details of our results for financial year 2017. And I would like to say in advance that, as usual, the financial metrics at this point are still preliminary and unaudited. First of all, the development of the individual divisions. Mercedes-Benz Cars continued along its path of profitable growth in 2017. Unit sales increased by 8% to a new high of 2.4 million vehicles. Revenue grew to 94.7 billion euros. Despite higher advance expenditure for our product offensive and new technologies, EBIT also increased to 9.2 billion euros. That's 13% more than in the previous year and the highest level to date. Return on sales reached 9.7%. This success is based on our attractive and innovative model portfolio, which is more diverse than ever before. Sales of the new E-Class, of which all model variants are available now, reached the new record of 400,000 units. Our SUVs also continued the success story with an overall 16% increase in sales to 823,000 units. So for the first time, more than a third of all automobiles were sold in the SUV segment. The Mercedes-Benz brand is now the #1 in the premium segment, not only in Germany and many other European core markets, but also in the United States, Canada, and Japan. In Europe, Mercedes-Benz cars sold more than 1 million vehicles for the first time. We achieved significant growth in each of the volume markets, France, Italy, Spain, and the United Kingdom. And also in Germany, we sold 2% more cars than in the previous year. We were particularly successful in China, our biggest single market. In China alone, we sold 619,000 vehicles last year, plus 7% more than in 2016. Of that number, 423,000 automobiles were from our local production, which is almost 70% of our total sales there. Growth in unit sales was also the main driver for the increased earnings at Mercedes-Benz Cars. Exchange rate effects were another factor with a positive impact on EBIT. On the other hand, our expenses increased due to advanced expenditure for new technologies and vehicles and for the expansion of our product capacities. The development of raw material prices also had a negative impact on earnings at the car division. Special items affected EBIT both in the year under review and in 2016. In 2017, a vehicle recall and voluntary service actions in connection with a plan for the future of these diesel engines reduced earnings by 0.4 billion euros. On the other hand, income of 0.2 billion euros resulted from the revaluation of our investment in their holding. To summarize, we can say that we were able to increase our EBIT significantly and at the same time additionally invested more than 1 billion euros in the future of Daimler Group. Daimler Trucks sold 471 vehicles in 2017, an increase of plus 13%. Revenue also grew significantly to 35.7 billion euros. Although there was not much tailwind from our major truck markets, Daimler Trucks significantly increased its EBIT to 2.4 billion euros. In the truck division, especially at the Mercedes-Benz brand, we took further steps to optimize our fixed costs. In this way, we intend to bring profitability to the targeted level in the coming years. The cost optimization we've planned and partially also realized should improve earnings by 1.4 billion euros by the end of 2018. These measures will then be fully effective as of the year 2019. With the development of unit sales in 2017, I'd like to emphasize the turning point in the NAFTA region. While our unit sales in the first half of the year were at 7% below the prior year level, they were up by 13% in the full year. And we achieved that increase, although demand for trucks in the North American market was at the previous year's level. A major contribution to this success came from the Freightliner Cascadia, which has been produced since the beginning of 2017. In the EU30 region, we were able to slightly increase our truck sales by 3%. We achieved significant growth in Indonesia and Russia. The good development of unit sales was the main driver for the increased earnings also at Daimler Trucks. Another factor was the sale of real estate in Japan and efficiency improvements. Earnings at the truck division were negatively affected by higher raw material prices and expenses in connection with the optimization of fixed costs. On the basis of its attractive product portfolio, Mercedes-Benz Vans set another record for unit sales in 2017. With growth of 12%, it passed the mark of 400,000 vehicles sold. The main growth drivers were the Vito van and the V-Class multipurpose vehicle, with an increase of 22%. But unit sales of the Sprinter also increased by 4% in the last full year of its current life cycle. Its successor will be launched in the first half of 2018. In addition, we've already sold 3,300 units of the new X-Class pickup in Europe. In regional terms, Mercedes-Benz Vans achieved growth in all of its important markets. We were particularly successful in China, where unit sales grew by 75%, driven by the new models we launched in the midsize segment in 2016. In Germany, our domestic market, we sold 10% more vans and set a new record too. Mercedes-Benz Vans revenue increased by 3% to 13.2 billion euros. EBIT of 1.2 billion euros was almost exactly at the level of 2016. Positive effects resulted primarily from the development of unit sales and exchange rates. However, at the van division as well, earnings were reduced by our investments in new technologies and vehicles. We were able to fully offset the effect from the end of contract manufacturing for Volkswagen. The same applies to the modifications at the Düsseldorf plant in connection with the upcoming model change for the Sprinter, which led to a stop of production for several weeks. With a return on sales of 9%, the division exactly achieved its target. Daimler Buses sold 28,700 buses and bus chassis worldwide in 2017. The main contribution to the significant increase in unit sales came from the Latin American market. In Brazil alone, we achieved a growth of 46% to the number of 7,200 chassis sold and profited from the gradually improving Brazilian economy. Our business with complete buses in the EU30 region also developed positively and was at the high level of the previous year. We defended our leading market position in this region. Revenue at Daimler Buses reached 4.4 billion euros, representing an increase of 4% compared to the previous year. Operating profit of 243 million euros was at the high prior year level. Positive effects on earnings resulted from the increased unit sales in Latin America and further efficiency enhancements. On the other hand, earnings were reduced by higher costs due to inflation, especially in Latin America, as well as by negative exchange rate effects. Daimler Financial Services continues along its growth path. Last year, we concluded 1.9 million new financing and leasing contracts in an amount of 70.7 billion euros, which means that new business grew by 14%. Once again, in 2017, about half of all new vehicles sold by our automotive divisions were supported by sales financing from Daimler Financial Services. By the end of 2017, we had a total of more than 4.8 million financed or leased vehicles on our books. So contract volume grew compared with the end of 2016 by 6% to almost 140 billion euros. Adjusted for exchange rate effects, contract volume actually grew by 12%. The increased contract volume was the main reason for the division's record earnings. Daimler Financial Services EBIT increased by 13% to 2.0 billion euros in 2017. Its return on equity rose to 17.6% and thus again surpassed the target. There was another positive effect from the development of risk costs, which remained at a very low level as a result of our disciplined risk management. We were able to offset the higher level of interest rates as well as our investments in new businesses. In order to arrive EBIT for the group, you need to know the items in the reconciliation. They added up to minus 299 million euros in 2017 compared with minus 316 million euros in the previous year. In the reconciliation of 2017, this also includes corporate initiatives such as Project Future and other items, eliminations, and above all, also expenses in connection with legal proceedings. In 2016, expenses in connection with a lawsuit of 400 million euros and losses from currency transactions of 241 million euros were included. Ladies and gentlemen, more and more people want to consume a car journey as a service, especially in big cities. Demand is increasing for mobility by tapping on your smartphone screen. At Daimler, we are ideally prepared for the resulting opportunities. Daimler Financial Services has continually developed and expanded its business with mobility services, the result being that we are now a pioneer among the automobile manufacturers. In the area of mobility services, we are focusing on three segments: car sharing, ride hailing, and multimodal platforms. We're extremely well positioned in all of those areas. Car2Go is the world's market leader for flexible car sharing. MyTaxi is the leading European taxi app. And with Movil, we offer highly attractive mobility solutions for cities and public transportation operators. In all of these businesses, we substantially increased the number of users and transactions in 2017. We launched new products and features, and we made further progress with our development expertise. By the end of 2017, Daimler Mobility Services was represented in more than 100 cities in 18 countries. This strong portfolio was supplemented by a series of strategic holdings. For example, in the driver service Black Lane, the long-distance bus company Flixbus, and the leading provider of private car sharing in the United States, Turo. In the short and medium term, we will develop a fast-growing additional market segment with our mobility services Even more important is that as soon as the technology is ready, these services will be the entry point into fully automated car services. Daimler Mobility Services offers the ideal conditions for this. First, we're developing the right customer base and market presence. Second, we're entering into partnerships with cities, the most important location for on-demand mobility. And thirdly, we're creating the required technological and specialist capabilities. All of that makes us the pioneer with regard to the transformation required. We're ideally prepared to enter the highly attractive business with robo-taxis. So much about our division's key figures. Ladies and gentlemen, Daimler's success in the past year is apparent in all the group's figures. With the significant growth in unit sales, revenue, and earnings, as well as our attractive product portfolio, we not only strengthened our core business, we also created an excellent starting position to master the challenges of the fundamental transformation for the automotive industry that lie ahead of us. In 2017, Daimler increased its revenue by 7% to the new record of 164.3 billion euros. In the past 5 years, we've expanded our business volume by approximately 40%. EBIT increased last year by 14% to 14.7 billion euros. This means that we continue to grow profitably, although we further increased our advance expenditure for the future. We also continued our long-term growth trend with regard to revenue and EBIT. Our automotive business exactly achieved the targeted margin of 9%. This is evidence that the strategy we're pursuing is paying off. Our free cash flow from the industrial business was affected in 2017 by the strengthening of the pension plan assets. Excluding the exceptional contribution of 3 billion euros to the German plan assets, the free cash flow would be 5 billion euros, despite significantly higher advance expenditure for new products and technologies. This is where the increased operating profit in the automotive divisions had a positive impact. The contribution to the pension plan assets also affected the net liquidity of our industrial business. It continues to be at a very good level. With our current liquid resources, we have a level appropriate to the general risk situation in the financial markets and the risk profile of our company. And they create the right conditions for us to systematically continue our investment offensive. Basically, our very solid balance sheet and liquidity figures greatly contribute to strengthening Daimler's A rating. Compared with the previous year, net profit increased substantially to 10.9 billion euros. It was due on the one hand to the significant increase in EBIT, but it also reflects extraordinary tax effects. A major factor is the tax reform that was passed in the United States in late 2017, especially the significant reduction in corporate income tax from 35% to 21% as of 2018. Due to our broad-based industrial and financial services business in the United States, compared with our strong value added, Daimler, like many local companies, benefits from this change in tax rates. The reduced tax rate requires the revaluation of the future tax liabilities for our U.S. subsidiaries. Together with an opposing aperiodic tax effect, this leads to a positive effect on income taxes of 1 billion euros in 2017. After net profit, 10.5 billion euros is attributable to the shareholders of Daimler AG, 2 billion more than in the previous year. This leads to earnings per share of 9.84 euros. We want our shareholders once again to participate commensurately in the company's success of the year 2017. At the annual shareholders meeting on April 5th, the Board of Management and the Supervisory Board will therefore propose the payment of an increased dividend of 3.65 euros per share. The dividend distribution would then increase the new record of 3.9 billion euros. This dividend takes into consideration that the U.S. tax reform will only take effect on future cash flows. Our general aim continues to be a payout of 40% of the net profit attributable to Daimler shareholders. On the basis of the current share price, the proposed distribution is equivalent to a dividend yield of approximately 5%, and the current interest environment, that represents a very attractive return on our shareholders' investment. We anticipate a positive development of the group's financial metrics also in 2018. We expect the free cash flow from the industrial business to significantly surpass both the prior year level and the dividend to be paid out in 2018. And that is our expectation, although we will invest even more in new products and technologies. Ladies and gentlemen, our ambition as the inventor of the automobile is to shape the fundamental transformation of the automotive industry from the forefront. That requires extensive investments in new products, innovative technologies, and modern production facilities. On the basis of our profitable core business, we increased our expenditure for shaping the future from an already very high level to a total of 15.5 billion euros in 2017. More than 6.7 billion euros for property, plant, and equipment, and 8.7 billion euros for research and development. We will vigorously continue our innovation offensive also in the coming years. In 2018 and 2019, we will continue to increase our investment and spend more than 32 billion euros on property, plant, and equipment and on research and development projects. Most of the investment in property, plant, and equipment will flow into the production preparations for our new models, our production facilities, including a worldwide network for electric vehicles for the flexible production of cars with combustion engines and electric drive, as well as the production of batteries. The focus of our research and development expenditure is on preparations for new vehicles, as well as the areas of autonomous driving, connectivity, and electric mobility. But we want to shape the future of Daimler from a position of strength too. This means not only that we have to keep our fingers firmly on the pulse of the market, but also that we have to react as quickly and flexibly as possible to the new market developments and a fundamentally changing competitive environment. With the planned implementation of a new structure, 3 strong business entities with their own management responsibility will be created under the roof and leadership of Daimler AG. 2 new companies to be founded for the areas of cars and vans and trucks and buses, and the existing and already legally independent Daimler Financial Services AG. This targeted structure will enable us to strengthen entrepreneurial responsibility and utilize the growth and earnings potential in the respective markets even better. With Project Future, the group is now pursuing not pursuing a savings or efficiency program and does not have the intention to reduce the size of the workforce. We're consulting closely with our employee representatives within the framework of the project. For example, we've agreed on the key points of a balance of interests for the employees. This means we've reached a fundamental agreement on shaping the future of our workforce. Important points are the extension of job guarantees until the end of 2029, continuous investment in the plants in Germany, and the extensive financing of the pension obligations. So far, neither the Board of Management nor the Supervisory Board of Daimler AG has made a final decision on the implementation of the new structure of the Daimler Group. Both boards will make a final assessment after the ongoing preparatory work and negotiations have been concluded. The preparations that are currently being made include a thorough due diligence to evaluate the economic, tax-related, and organizational effects of the planned new structure. In addition, IT systems will have to be adjusted and numerous companies of the group will have to be reallocated. We're making good progress with the work on the project, but thoroughness and care take priority over speed. Should the Board of Management and the Supervisory Board decide in favor of the final implementation of the new group structure, the consent of a shareholders' meeting of Daimler AG would be required. A resolution to that effect could be passed at the annual shareholders' meeting in the spring of 2019. An important element of the balance of interest for the employees in connection with Project Future is the extraordinary contribution of 3 billion euros to the pension plan assets of Daimler AG. With this renewed contribution, we've invested again in our employees' company pensions. This will have to safeguard the future of our workforce. As a result, the funded status of our pension obligations improves to 86% at the group. The funded status at Daimler AG is actually at 90% even. Since the year 2019, the pension plan assets of the Daimler Group have grown from 14.6 to 27.2 billion euros. This includes 8.5 billion euros that we've transferred to our pension plans in the context of extraordinary contributions. In this way, we're also honoring the efforts of our workforce, which play a major part in achieving Daimler's success. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all from me, and I will now hand over back to Dieter Zetsche.
Thank you very much indeed, Bodo. Our balance sheet for 2017 shows that our company is very healthy and highly profitable. We are very proud of that. Customers who rely on Daimler can be sure they will receive an outstanding product, and shareholders understand that Daimler offers them a profitable investment. Employees know that they are working for an attractive employer. Our company stands for stable success in volatile times. However, no matter how stable you are, you still need to keep moving. That's why we are forging ahead with the transformation of Daimler throughout the group. I'd like to talk about that in some more detail. Our focus on our core business is the foundation of our success today. It forms the economic backbone of Daimler. And we plan to strengthen it even further. Above all, we will invest into new products. In January, for example, we began deliveries of the new versions of the S-Class, Coupe and Convertible. The new CLS will be launched on the market in March. All in all, we will introduce more than a dozen new car models in 2018. A little over 2 weeks ago in Detroit, we presented the latest version of a Mercedes icon, the new G-Class, which is over here to my left. It's a real eye-catcher, as you can see here on the stage. The new G-Class is even more practical in daily use on the road, and off-road it's more powerful than ever before. It's equipped with all of our driver assist systems, and its interior has been completely modernized. Nonetheless, we've managed to preserve the model's unique character. The year 2018 marks the start of a new chapter in the long and successful history of the G-Class. We've sold almost 300,000 units of the G-Class over nearly 40 years, and around 80% of these vehicles are still on the road. This success story has benefited the Mercedes-Benz brand as a whole. The new product highlight for commercial vehicles in 2018 is the Sprinter. The requirements a van needs to meet are changing, and they're as varied as our customers and the sectors in which they operate. That's why one of the Sprinter's recipes for success is the fact that we can offer more than 1,000 base variants alone, with different lengths, bodies, cabs and drive systems. Moreover, because future transport vehicles will have to be linked to other parts of the logistics chain, the new Sprinter will have the requisite hardware to be integrated with the Internet of Things. We'll be presenting all the details about the new Sprinter next Tuesday. The market launch is scheduled to begin in the first half of 2018. We continue to use our technological know-how and the earning power from our core business to effectively address the key issues that are shaping the future of our industry. We've combined these issues under the heading CASE, which stands for connectivity, autonomous driving, sharing and electric mobility. In other words, we are doing nothing less than reinventing personal mobility. Let me give you a few examples. In January, we presented our new infotainment system at the CES in Las Vegas, MBUX. The system is not a further development, it's a new beginning that takes connectivity at Mercedes-Benz to the next level. MBUX supplements navigation features with augmented reality technology. The system can be customized, and thanks to artificial intelligence, it's able to learn. We've also included over-the-air updates. MBUX is controlled via touchpads, a touch screen, and a new intelligent voice-controlled assistant that understands natural language and thus doesn't require any predefined commands. MBUX will be launched in the new A-Class, which we will present tomorrow tomorrow in Amsterdam. In order to accelerate our progress on the road to autonomous driving, we've conducted a worldwide test drive during the past few months. The test vehicle, which is based on a series-produced S-Class, collected important data under real traffic conditions on 5 continents. This data will help our engineers deal with the differences between regional traffic conditions as they refine our autonomous driving technology. The Intelligent World Drive, as the test drive is known, also showed us that in the near future we need to have not only a legal framework in Germany, but also legal frameworks that function at the international level and are as harmonized as possible. After all, our customers don't want to be constrained by national borders when they're in an automated vehicle either. We're introducing automated driving functions in our production model step by step. That's enabling customers to gradually develop trust in the technology. In parallel, we are working on fleets of level 5 autonomous vehicles for metropolitan areas. We are not the only ones doing this. The whole industry is talking about robo-taxis these days. But in order to build such an ecosystem, you need to control several things. The vehicle technology is only the beginning. The software platform, intelligent fleet management systems, and financing must also be considered. We've attained an outstanding starting position in all of these areas in the past few years. Our goal is to put the first self-driving taxis on the road in the early 2020s. Developments in the area of electric mobility are also racing ahead. We now have the technical requirements to build electric vehicles that are equal to cars with IC engines, and even superior to them in some areas. In the years ahead, we'll invest more than 10 billion euros in the expansion of our electric fleet. By 2022, we will have electrified the entire Mercedes product range. We will offer at least one electric alternative in every segment. Moreover, we will convert Smart into an all-electric vehicle brand in Europe and the USA by 2020. In addition to our investment in new models, we're spending another 1 billion euros to establish our own battery production operations at 5 plants on 3 continents. We're also electrifying our commercial vehicles with the same determination. For example, Mercedes-Benz Vans plans to electrify all of its commercial model series in the years ahead, starting with the e-Vito in 2018. Other model series will follow starting in 2019. We're developing electric heavy-duty trucks at Mercedes-Benz Trucks and Freightliner. Our light Fuso Canter truck is already on the market. All truck and bus models from Fuso will also be offered in electric versions in the years ahead. Mercedes-Benz will launch an all-electric bus in a pilot project this year. As you can see, we began shifting into the electric mobility mode some time ago, and we still have many more plans. In terms of our practical work on the case topics, we're pursuing a variety of strategies. On the one hand, we're strengthening our own expertise, for example, by setting up a network of digital development centers from Seattle to Tel Aviv. At the same time, we're cooperating with strong partners, for example, with Bosch in the field of autonomous driving and with a whole range of companies on establishing a battery charging infrastructure. We're also investing in highly innovative startups, especially in the field of mobility services. All of this requires a culture of openness at the company. We are working on that as well in our Leadership 2020 program. We wanted our people to grasp the transformation quickly. That's why we initially focused on changing our processes, rules and tools. This was the right approach. Everyone saw that we weren't just talking about change, we were actually changing things. Now a new phase is beginning. We are focusing on the principles of Leadership 2020, the principles by which we manage our operations and work together. For example, if you work together in a swarm, you need more than just a set of rules. Above all, you need to have the right attitude in order to cooperate effectively and act with agility. And the current debate surrounding the EUGT shows how important it is to have a common understanding of integrity that everyone in the company shares. What we have already achieved in terms of cultural transformation is unique in our company's long history. When the idea of transformation is firmly established in all of our teams, it will change Daimler even more than we can imagine today. I'm looking forward to that. We want the structure of the group to reflect the entrepreneurial spirit that we are fostering through Leadership 2020. That's because we believe that our internal attitude and our external position should complement each other. After all, it's easier to be fast, flexible and close to the market when the structure around us is also supportive, as Bodo already explained. We're planning to transform our divisions into legally independent entities under the umbrella of Daimler. We are convinced that if we grant greater responsibility to smaller units, we will become more agile and more focused on our work with specific customers. That'll make us more effective and even more attractive to investors and potential partners. We also want to put the best possible structures in place to ensure a successful future. It's important to achieve the right balance. That's why we are strengthening individual responsibility in our organization, while at the same time safeguarding the synergies we have at Daimler. So much for a summary of our strategic outlook. What can we expect to see in 2018 in concrete terms? The global economy could develop as favorably this year as it did in 2017. We expect to see economic growth of well over 3%. We also expect global car demand to increase slightly in 2018. Demand for trucks will probably increase in most of the regions that are relevant to us. We also believe the markets for vans and buses will develop positively. We plan to increase our car sales slightly in 2018 and thus set yet another record. We also want to achieve a significant increase in business volume for trucks, vans and buses, and financial services is also striving for further growth. On this basis, we expect to see the following earnings results at the divisions: cars around the prior year level, trucks significantly above the prior year level, vans slightly below the prior year level, buses significantly above the prior year level, financial services around the prior year level. All in all, we expect the group's EBIT in 2018 to be around the prior year level. Ladies and gentlemen, we've been cooperating for some time with the startup What Three Words. We also recently became a shareholder. What Three Words has divided the world into squares and named each square using a random combination of 3 words. We're introducing this system in automobiles in the new A-Class. The system enables simple navigation that is precise to within a meter, even in places where there are no addresses to help the driver on large company premises, for example. The algorithm has assigned the following combination of words to the visitor's address of our HQ in Untertürkheim: erfüllen völlig Lux, or fulfill completely links. It seems to me that the first 2 words at least are a perfect fit for us. In recent years, we've fulfilled our promises, we've delivered. During this period, there were 3 phases in the development of our company. The first phase was one of restructuring. We focused on our core area of expertise, building automobiles. In the second phase, our goal was to become number 1. We achieved this goal earlier than we'd planned. Now we're in the phase of shaping the future, and we are doing that from a position of strength. Our mission remains the same. Daimler belongs on top. Today, 132 years after the invention of the automobile, Daimler is once again leading the way into the future. We hope you will continue to accompany us on this journey. Thank you very much.
All right, let's proceed to our Q&A session. The principle is very clear. You raise your hand, I will call on you, and you tell us your name and who you work for. Ms. Gomez from Börsenzeitung. Now, I'd be interested in the share of diesel vehicles in the overall revenue. Now, we're talking about Europe because this is the most relevant region for diesel vehicles. In Europe in 2017, we sold more diesel vehicles than in 2016, simply because we also sold more gasoline engine vehicles, combustion engine vehicles, and the share went down slightly to, by 2 to 3%, and it's still distinctly above 50% in terms of the gasoline engines. I have a question on Car2Go. BMW actually paved the way for a cooperation by selling its shares in SIX. And the question is, how do you go from here, and what type of cooperation is this supposed to be? And my second question is, you talked about commodity prices and said that this was a burden on your earnings. And can you tell us a little bit more about that? And what are the risks you see for the future also in relation to electromobility? Now, coming back to your first question, you'll have to ask BMW about that, as to what the strategy behind that is when they end their cooperation with Sixt. And then also, we will not contribute to any speculation in the media in that regard. And I can be a little more specific on your second question. In 2017, commodity prices represent a burden of 700 million euros, 400 million euros for passenger cars, and those were fully compensated for, including the investments into the future. That also added to our expenses in 2017, and for trucks, we're talking about 200 million euros, both focused mostly on the second half of the year, not so much in the first half of the year. And we also expect commodity prices to continue to represent a burden in 2018, around 200 million euros, but that also depends on commodity prices and how they develop, and that's just part of our planning. Taylor of Reuters.
Guten Tag, die Herren. Ich habe eine Frage. Was erwarten Sie für
Good morning.
Währungseffekte
What are the currency effects you expect for 2018? And for mobility services, can you imagine that there will be a par show separate listings of such a company? And then also, what about legal provisions? Have you increased provisions for legal proceedings in this quarter? Now, coming back to your first question, the strategy in mobility services. Now, this is, first of all, trying to gain and retain a strong market position. We demonstrated that in 2017. We're on a very good way when it comes to that. You will also have seen that the number of customers and transactions have increased by more than 100% in 2017. Also, we are represented in more countries and cities around the globe, so that is why I can say that we've increased our market position, strengthened our market position, and our strategy is to continue along those lines in future as well. Which strategy we pursue in order to support that in the future? Well, there are several strategies, among them being the financing part of the scheme, but it also depends on how you drive this growth organically. Now, the underlying assumption is to continue to invest strongly in order to build on your market position. And I commented on that earlier, in that we've already achieved that quite significantly so in Europe. Now, the currency effects, you saw that last year in our disclosure, it stated that these were positive, being around 300 million euros. And in relation to the latest currency fluctuations to the euro appreciated as compared to many other currencies, and we expect a burden of 1 billion euros for 2018, and that relates mainly to the US dollar, the Chinese renminbi, and the Turkish lira. The British pound needs to be mentioned in this context, and also the Japanese yen. So it relates to a number of currencies that represent a burden, and the currency exchange rates represent a burden. And we also are striving to make sure that these currency effects and also the investments into the future will remain at a constant level in 2018. This is an ambitious objective, but this is our target for 2018. As to provisions for the legal proceedings, I told you a little bit about that earlier in my remarks. In the reconciliation, we noted the key facts and matters, including also legal proceedings, due to the nature of things, the fact being that these are pending proceedings and confidentiality needs to be ensured. I cannot provide you any further details on that. Now, the list is quite long. Ms. Beermann of Bloomberg. Could you be a little more detailed on the investments in F&E for 2018 and 2019, and also tell us a little bit more as to for how much longer you will keep that high level of R&D? And the second question is on the image, on the reputation. What are the additional steps you intend to take in terms of the diesel technology? And the third question relates to the restructuring of the group. You just stated that jobs will be guaranteed by 2029. You increased also the contributions to pension plan assets. When will you become a little more precise as to what you intend to do with the restructuring, in particular in relation to the claim by the shareholders to split off the truck division from the group? Now, coming back to your first question, we distributed a document that will give you some detailed information on that. And I'm talking more specifically about page 45 of our capital market presentation. And this lists the figures for 2018 and 2019. In 2018, 2019, we will invest 7.4 billion in CapEx and 8.9 billion in our research and development. And you have a table that then splits it up according to the divisions. Please refer to this page. It's very precise. And as I said earlier, we invest heavily in the 4 Cs: connectivity, autonomous driving, and electrification, and shared services, but also in new products, strongly so on the passenger car side. And on the truck side of things, we will come to a normal R&D budget. And on the van side, we need to mention that this year we had quite some expenses for the pickup truck and the launch of the new Sprinter. So we'll reduce these investments a little bit more. And this level will continue to exist for the next 2 years for sure. And we will believe that in relation to revenue, our budget for R&D and investments will then go back to the target corridor previously defined. Now, if you talk about the image of the diesel, we will have to differentiate among the different stakeholders, the media, the political sphere, and the customers. Those 3 groups, basically. And for us, obviously, the customer's attitude is a key element, obviously. And I said earlier that we sold more diesel vehicles in 2017 as opposed to 2016. The slight decrease in Europe by 3% focuses on 3 markets: Germany, the UK, and less so also France. In the other European markets, we have not seen any changes in the demand for diesel engines. And over the course of the last few months, we've also seen quite a constant and stable development on that slightly lower level. And this does not say anything about future developments, of course. And also, this will be dependent on external factors at the end of the day. We believe, however, and our approach in the past and the future will also be to re-emphasize that modern diesel engines, in particular the diesel engines we developed 5 years ago that have been in production now for 2 years, and these engines will comply with future RDE values, and they do not represent a burden on emissions, and they will also represent a benefit in terms of CO2 emissions and will remain a good option in future as well. Now, on your questions about the new corporate structure, as I said, we are in the stage of implementation of the new structure and are doing well in terms of that, and this relates to the schedule, the time plan we set for ourselves, but I also mentioned in my remarks that this is quite a comprehensive project that is needed in order to implement the new structure. And then also, lastly, the Board of Management and Supervisory Board will have to make a final decision on its implementation. And then the annual shareholders meeting in 2019 at the earliest will have to pass the resolution on that as well. Now, the key is the flexibility for the future. That's why we're doing this. And Dieter just said about something about this in his remarks. It has to do with the flexibility of the divisions and making sure that earnings and market potentials can be fully unveiled. This is the focus of why we're doing this. Our shareholders and investors provided us with very good feedback on this planned new structure and the possible measures, flexible measures that you can take once you implement this structure. But we're currently focused on the implementation and not on the discussion of any possible alternatives, because you have to have a structure in place before you can then find reasons for a potential modification. So that's why we are focusing on the implementation of the structure. And we believe that what we've agreed upon with our employee representatives, they also support the structure. So this balance of interest, as I referred to in my remarks, is also something that will be in the interest of the entire group. Mr. Christoph of the Stuttgarter Nachrichten is next. I have a question on electrification, the electrification of your model series. Which role does the fuel cell technology play? Has its role changed, is my question also. And then also, do you have any concepts or ideas for the disposal of a potentially large number of batteries? And on the U.S. tax reform, I have an additional question as well. Now, the BEAT, were you exposed to that, the internal license barrier and threshold, and to what extent will you be exposed to the threshold, the tax threshold, if that were to be implemented? On the fuel cell, now you know that at the International Auto Show in Frankfurt, we presented a new fuel cell concept car based on the GLC that we're going to introduce to the market this year. We believe that it is good and right to be at the forefront in terms of this technology and to drive the technology as well. And of course, generally speaking, the vehicle is just one component in the overall system. And if in the energy technology allows for storage based on hydrogen involving renewable energies. And if that were to be the path for the future, then the fuel cell technology would be a sensible strategy to pursue. If, however, hydrogen were to represent an attractive possibility, and if that had to be generated specifically for this purpose, then the efficiency of changing the medium several times for the generation of the energy would only make sense to a limited extent. And of course, the fuel cell has inherent benefits in terms of its long range and the short charging times. And this is then put in context with a higher range offered by battery electric vehicles and lower charging times that we can now provide for. And as to your question about the disposal of batteries, the recycling of batteries, rather, we also have projects initiated with city utilities companies, and we provide one part of a potential solution in that cells or batteries that might have been used for 10 years could then be reused in the context of energy storage, stationary energy storage. But this, however, is not a complete solution for the distinct increase in batteries to be expected in future once these get returned. And this is one of the open questions in electrification. We all know that the changeover, the transition from combustion engines to electric vehicles is not just something that will be solved by switching a lever and this will solve all your problems. There are clear advantages and and electric mobility, but there are also a number of open unsolved questions, and we need to work on that and make sure that the system overall will offer benefits, and we can solve a number of all of these questions, but not all of them, and that's why this has to be a joint effort by all the stakeholders involved.
Regarding your questions about the interest limit regarding refinancing, we don't have any information on that in the system. Mr. Mahlmeister, Plato Brief. Good morning, Frank Mahlmeister, Plato Brief. My question relates to your outlook and your forecast on EBIT. Why is it so conservative? I mean, your figures are just overwhelming, fantastic. The economy is doing well, will maybe even improve. So actually, you should go for more. And the other question relates to your structure. I mean, you're not the only one who pursues similar structures. Everybody else does that in order to also do partial separate listing. So actually, I cannot help wondering whether you plan to do the same. And then regarding the relation between the group chairman, group CEO and the division CEOs, how about it, the separate entities, if the boss really is head of the biggest division anyway? What about the other entities and their autonomousness? Well, on your last question, we have never really felt compelled to do as the others do, and I think Bodo Uber clearly stated that as far as the pending task for our group is concerned, and we fully agree on that, he wants to create the prerequisites for telling or proposing to the shareholders meeting in 2019 to divide the group into 4 legal entities. Now, this is a very big feat. It's extremely complex regarding the sheer size of our company, and of course we do focus on that. We want to create more leeway for ourselves, to have more discretion for future steps that may take us in completely different directions. And at this point in time, I cannot give you any more information about this. The question, who will be where and in which position, in which part of the company, is a question that does not at all hold priority right now. We still have a lot of time to discuss that, but we are fully agreed on the following. We are all responsible for Daimler AG and for Mercedes cars. It's not a legal entity right now, and combining the job of CEO Daimler and head of Mercedes-Benz cars has brought us major benefits, and there's really no doubt why this should change. But it's a question to be addressed at a later point in time. We know regarding the economic outlook that framework conditions are very positive. Of course, we are aware of the higher volatility that we see around us, but we are also fully aware of the fact that this year, as Bodo Uber stated, there will be a burden on our EBIT due to currency effects amounting to 1 billion. And we also know that our expenses for the future will have to be stepped up by more or less the same magnitude. So for a constant outlook on EBIT, we have 2 billion in terms of operative performance increase. If there are more potentials to be seen, we will definitely not hesitate to exploit these potentials. But the new year has only just begun, so let's lean back and take a calm look at further developments. Mr. Vetter, you're next in line. Good morning. 2 questions about the headlines of the recent days. Of course, I do fully understand that you have to come to terms with that, but maybe you can tell us what you think about the damage to the reputation of the diesel engine and the automotive industry in general after these studies have emerged in recent years. And your personal opinion, you said you didn't really think it possible, personally, that Daimler would be involved in such studies, but Daimler has been involved. Now, how did you react personally after you learned the news? Well, to answer the first part of your question, unfortunately, I'm not in a position to quantify in whichever form which kind of influence this discussion will have in the short term or long term on the automotive industry in general and the development of diesel engines in particular. Of course, it will have a negative impact. There's no doubt about it. Jörg Hove was the first one who informed me about inquiries coming from the media regarding this topic. That was last week, and I immediately suggested launching an investigation in order to find out how much is true about these things. This investigation was going on mainly over the weekend, and as far as the current status of the investigation is concerned, we gave you the information about it, but we also asked your indulgence. And we ask you to understand that we cannot reach full conclusions after 4 days of investigations. However, we clearly and unambiguously stated that we are fully against such investigations and detest them. Max Hegler, Süddeutsche Zeitung, please. Good morning, gentlemen. I have 3 questions also regarding diesel. The Federal Environmental Agency published a news release. They said that not enough has been done. Diesel emissions still are 46% above the emission limits, so they require really tough improvement measures. And Ms. Hendricks' statements endorse this. What do you plan to do in order to improve the situation? And another question. What kind of future do you want to create for the diesel? It was said that a transparent research institute should be founded together with NGOs, a very transparent one. Would that be a solution, unlike the research with monkeys? And then Euro 6D, that was mentioned by the federal German states. Euro 6D should have some tax incentives in order to improve the situation. What do you think about that? Well, on your first question, automotive manufacturers share more or less the same view. Of course, it is possible to modify the drive in vehicles in the lab. In the lab, you can also install a battery into a CI engine-driven vehicle and turn it into an electrically powered vehicle. But of course, such a vehicle would never be fit for production. So much is clear. If, of course, at a much smaller scale than I just mentioned, and which would be required in this context, we would have to give you a realistic estimate. The development of a significantly modified vehicle, including winter driving tests and ensuring the sustainability and the fact that they would be reliably working when driven by customers, would require us to invest 2 or 3 years. We may rest assured that fuel economy would suffer from that, and performance as well. Now, we do not know how to reconcile that with the customers' wish to get a better vehicle. The new vehicles that we usually develop are developed in our factories. We produce them in our factories. Now, if we interfere massively with the vehicle's hardware, we would have to do that everywhere, including our service facilities. In other words, there are hundreds of thousands of locations, and they have employees who can do only so much. However, they would have to interfere massively with the vehicle hardware, and purely statistically speaking, significant faulty results would come off of that. How would we deal with that and with our customers? So regardless of how to finance the sheer size of the effort, there are many, many customers who would be opposed to such a strategy. On the other hand, we always say the glass is half full or half empty. Of course, it's true that there are many, many metering points that show that limit values are infringed, but these infringements are going down at most measuring points, and continuously so. Even at the Neckartor, which has always ranked top. So limits were infringed on only 4 days, 4 more days than legally admissible. And I think this shows that we are pursuing the right direction. Replacing, substituting old diesel vehicles by new ones will put us on the right track. So as far as the hardware retrofitting is concerned in our company, as far as I know, is more or less what you hear from other car makers. No changes here. And I fully agree with what you said, that whenever we talk about trust and confidence, transparency is of paramount importance. So I'm very open-minded, and we even take the initiative to look for measures that will bring a maximum of transparency regarding the facts about IC engines and especially diesel engines. There are still some negative aspects that we have to deal with, and we have to reduce them. Once again, let me repeat, we are still trying to find out what else we can do in order to pursue the right direction, and we are very open-minded to listen to new proposals, because trust and confidence can only be gained if there is transparency and if we can really convey the impression that we know all the facts and the backgrounds and talk about them. There is a whole series of different proposals regarding legal framework conditions or tax-related framework conditions and how they could help us in our efforts. But I do not wish to comment on any of these proposals. Joachim Pech, Südwestrundfunk. Good morning. I have 2 questions about locations. First, what are your expectations regarding the compact class this year, also due to the introduction, the launch of the new A-class? And what kind of impact will this have on Rastatt? And number 2, how about trucks? Demand has developed much better than you thought it would even 1 year ago, at least in Europe. And what kind of prospects do you see for Europe and the Middle East, especially regarding Wörth? What are your expectations, please? Well, as far as the compact class is concerned, compared to the original plan when we launched the new generation to the market, over the last 6 years, we have built up significantly more capacities, both in some of the plants and in some external producers. It is truly remarkable that this in extremely significantly increased capacity has been utilized fully, even in the last year of production, and we still have delivery bottlenecks. Of course, we are currently in a transition period, so capacity is slightly limited. At the same time, we are building more capacities for the next generation of vehicles. So as far as the market is concerned, this generation, well, a few variants will still be on for some time, and the new generation that triggered some reactions show that there is a very positive trend, and the new generation, of course, will encompass various types of vehicles. So I'm absolutely confident that the first generation of the new concept will be tremendously successful, and that the success of the first generation of the compact class will be even greater with the second generation to come. This, of course, will have an impact on Rastatt insofar as we produce cars in much higher number than we had originally planned to do. Well, of course, there are some restrictions due to changes to transformation that limit potential, but across the board it will increase potential. Martin. Yes, as far as trucks go, back in 2017 in Europe we saw a very good market for trucks indeed. So the very positive prospect for 18 rests on the good performance in 2017, which will continue in 2018. So currently I do not see any negative impact on the good capacity utilization of the Worth plant. Trucks are very volatile, that is, the trucks market is very volatile, but we have a lot of instruments that would enable us to respond at very short notice, if necessary, in order to step up the output of the plants. So we look ahead to 2018 with a lot of confidence.
Mr. Fasser of Handelsblatt. Two questions. My first question again relates to the diesel technology. Mr. Müller talked about diesel subsidies that might be cut, and in exchange for that, to provide greater subsidies for electric vehicles. Is that a position that you support? Promote electric vehicles and cut subsidies for diesel vehicles? And then also, second question, this week you also went to the VDA, the German Association of the Automotive Industry. Obviously, the UGT issue overshadowed that a little bit, but you also elected a new chairman, new president of the VDA. What is your expectation of Mr. Mattes in order to make sure that this crisis in the confidence in the diesel technology can be tackled, and how the association is to be reshaped in the future, and what the task will be for the future and the years ahead? Relating to the VDA again. Now, if you allow me to answer two questions in one answer, I can tell you that the VDA has its own stand, a uniform opinion with all its members. The taxation that on the crude oil side offers a better situation, a worse situation, in a worse situation on the taxation side of things for the combustion engines. This is at least what applies to the current mandate, and our understanding is to retain the scheme. So we are in agreement with the continuation along these lines, but that's just one aspect. Customers have to pay a higher price, a higher purchase price for diesel vehicles. And in the buying position of customers, the lower operating costs and lower consumption and lower price of diesel also play a role, obviously. And changing the underlying conditions for customers in the short term is not something that is recommendable from our point of view. Going back to your question about the VDA, Mr. Wissmann headed the VDA for a number of years. Mr. Mattes was now elected the new president of the VDA 2 days ago, and of course, we would like to see that together with the VDA, but also by the efforts of individual stakeholders, it will be possible to overcome the situation of the last few years, and that we can overcome this dire situation that was triggered by the automotive industry. And of course, it would be unrealistic to expect that the discussion will be over tomorrow. This can only be a medium to long-term process that will then end the discussion, a process that needs to be supported by the facts. The chairman and the president of the association cannot contribute much to that, but also the presentation or the way in which you present yourself also contribute to that. And the president of the VDA has a key role to play when it comes to that. This whole issue, however, is focused on Germany in a certain way, but it's not a German issue and not an issue of German automotive manufacturers only, and that is why the cooperation on the international level remains important, and maybe we can work a little more in a bit more intertwined manner in future. I believe, overall speaking, Mr. Mattes has a lot of integrity. He's very knowledgeable. And therefore, I believe that we could win a good candidate and now president of the VDA, and that is why he will be up to the task and perform as expected. So we have Mr. Heller and Mr. Pretzer, both of Stuttgarter Zeitung. I have a question on the EUGT, this lobbying association. Mr. Denner said in the beginning of the week that Bosch said that it was to leave the association in 2012-2013 because the results of the association's work did not come up to their expectations. I would assume that you did know about Bosch wanting to leave and why they would leave. What did you do with this information and the reason they gave for leaving? Now, as the restructuring of Daimler Group, now we were given the reassurance that you were not thinking of selling parts of the company, and the employees would have liked to see that as an additional reassurance and that you guarantee that no parts of the group will be sold. Why would you not issue such a guarantee to your employees? And from my understanding, the exclusion of a sale would also excluding a partial going public. You talked about passenger cars, and you said that SUVs make up for a third of your revenues. And I believe this might represent an issue when it comes to complying with future CO2 emission thresholds. And if not, how do you intend to tackle the situation? Coming back to your first question, we already stated that this is a pending investigation, part of it a pending investigation, and we stated this in the very beginning of this press conference. Overall speaking, I don't know. There are probably hundreds of different working groups and research associations, you name it, that might be a little more in the focus today than it was the case for each of them individually in the past, but I cannot tell you anything more specific for as long as we haven't proceeded further with our investigations. As to SUVs, it is correct that on a worldwide scale, the segment of SUVs has been on the increase and has increased more strongly than any other segment, I believe, and this, of course, to the detriment of sedans. And thinking back to the past, and I think back to a more distant past. So SUVs were much heavier. They had their own framework structures, and all-wheel drive had an impact on fuel consumption figures. Today, however, we have more and more sedans featuring all-wheel drive. SUVs have self-carrying bodies, and they never need additional components, additional transmission components, and that is why the differences to sedans are simply that the cross sections are different, so the airflow figures and resistance will therefore be different. That is a difference, but it's not the same as in the past, and that is why the impact on the CO2 balance for the fleet is still there, but much lower than in the past. No, there was one more question about restructuring of the group. Okay, Bodo. We stated this in our press release. We also made this part of our remarks. We also told the individual stakeholders, but just to reiterate and underline that a little bit more, in terms of Project Future, there is a supervisory board mandate or support by the supervisory board, and there is a resolution by the Board of Management, so that is why the structure was confirmed by the employee representatives, not only by signing the balance of interest document, but also by the shareholders, and the majority of the shareholders supported this. As we stated, this is about room of maneuver we'd like to have, flexibility we'd like to have. And what we exclude is splitting off, selling individual divisions. Mr. Pretzler of Stuttgarter Zeitung. I have also some questions on the diesel with a focus on Germany. At the diesel summit, you promised software updates and the exchange bonuses. What's the feedback you got? How many people have made use of this exchange? And then another question on the primates and the testing on primates. You built up quite a strict compliance system. Executives had to take a lot of courses. And the employee, released from its duties, stated publicly how important integrity is. Isn't this something that leaves you stunned in a way, or would you have to make modifications in the system because it doesn't seem to be working? Thank you for your question. On your question on software updates and the exchange and replacement bonuses, we offer, insofar as it's not been the case before, we tried to initiate the development of the required software updates. Again, we cannot change 2 bits and then you're done. You will have an impact on the functioning of the vehicle, and you will want to make sure that all the other functions and features will be retained apart from the improvement of the NOx figures. For the scope that we had already made public, we now see a high degree of implementation. The customers also welcome the offer, and we received quite a bit of feedback on that. And the first ready-to-use development was just handed over to the KBA. This has to be confirmed at the test stand, of course. And as promised during the diesel summit, we will now complete all the results required over the course of the year. And depending on the KBA and its approvals and the speed of approval, we will then have customers that can come in contact us for a replacement. But as I said, the experience so far has been very positive. As to the replacement bonuses, we have, it's not comparable one-to-one, but we see some slight parallels to a program we had a few years ago, and we had to assume that the potentials for the brand Mercedes of customers that own very old vehicles and that are to change over to vehicles with a much higher entry price. This potential is limited for a premium car manufacturer as opposed to volume car manufacturers. And we also discussed this earlier, in that across the entire range of our product portfolio, we're manufacturing at our capacity limits. So that is why we cannot just, within a matter of 3 days, address the ordering of a new vehicle. We can only act within the capacities we have. So both of these factors then contributed to the following situation. We cannot present you with 5-digit figures, but at least 4-digit figures of customers that have made use of the offer. Now, apart from consenting to do so during the diesel summit, we then also extended and prolonged the campaign to this year, even though it was restricted to last year originally. So this is the status I can describe to you. As to your other question, this relates to a further development of attitude. I wouldn't like to call it behavior. I'd like to call it attitude. An attitude is something that goes far into the substance of yourself and the company, and it takes time. And we also have more than 290,000 employees. And even though all the programs, campaigns, and initiatives that we started in order to address that, trying to make sure that all employees all over the world are on board, you will never reach a situation that all 290,000 employees will always act according to these values, but you will be able to reach more and more employees, therefore reducing the likelihood more and more that things that might be detrimental to the company or that the company rejects will happen. And that is why every individual case is disappointing. Every individual case that proves the contrary is very disappointing. I fully agree with you on that, but this does not mean that we should assume that for now and forever we will not be able to exclude individuals not acting according to these lines. Mr. Rabold from Bloomberg is next. Yes, Christopher Rabold of Bloomberg. I have an additional question on the project future. Now, you stated earlier that you went at great lengths in order to initiate the project. Can you tell us a little bit about how expensive it is, how expensive is the preparation, and how expensive would the implementation be once the resolution would be passed? Well, we quantified this already. For the preparatory steps, we forecast a three-digit million amount, so a rather very low three-digit million amount. And if we were to decide on the project over the course of the year, the Board of Management and the Supervisory Board would then have to review this estimate. So the colleague next to Ms. Gomez is next. Sebastian Schmidt, also from Börsenzeitung. I have two questions. My first question relates to your sales figures that increased by 8% for this year. You also expect a slight increase. Now, last year, if you just exclude China, you sold 20,000 units less. So does that mean that you're not as optimistic for 2018 in terms of China, or will there be higher sales figures outside of China? That's my first question. And then my second question relates to the leased and financed vehicles in your balance sheet. What's the share of diesel engines, and how has it changed in 2017?
Also wir hatten ein außerordentlich erfolgreiches Jahr 2017.
2017 has been an extraordinarily successful year, and the 8% increase in sales correspond to 10% increase on the retail level. So the market really is thriving. In just a few days, we will then also report the January figures. And this will again be a very appealing result we have to present for January. What we need to take into consideration for 2018, and I already pointed to that fact, is that we will have a changeover in the compact car segment, and therefore also have reduced capacities available as part of this changeover to the new models. So that's part of the story. If you do not just have new bumpers, but remodel, redevelop vehicles from scratch. So this is unavoidable. And that is why we assume that in 2018, we could sell more vehicles, then we will be able to do so capacity-wise, because we have been expanding plant capacities continuously, and will also do everything possible this year in order to make sure that the existing capacities and the new capacities will allow us to produce the maximum number of units. And the more successful we will be there, the better will also be the increase for 2018.
Regarding your question about financial services, in our portfolio, of course, we also show minor changes. As Dr. Zetsche said earlier, the movements are even more slowly, in inverted commas, because you see everything 3 or 4 years in our portfolio. So, of course, the impact on diesel shares is very, very small. And regarding your second question, this is not something that we disclose, how big is the share that we've got there. But let me tell you that we always evaluate the figures for our vehicles, the balance sheet figures, etc., etc. And I can tell you that we have never seen any major effects to now, neither on the diesel side nor on the residual value side, and my statement also refers to petrol engines. Now, China. The colleague over here on the left-hand side, seen from my point of view.
China Auto Review. Let's move away from diesel in Europe into China, where you've had much success over the last 5 years. Sales tripled from 200,000 units to 600,000 units. But maintaining that momentum will be much harder if you want to grow further. So my big question to Dr. Zetsche is, what plans as far as the elements of the case strategy do you have to help that momentum in China? And considering the Chinese governments, they've hinted that they will have a roadmap to phase out sales of internal combustion engine vehicles. Do you foresee a similar plan within Daimler for the Chinese market when you plan to electrify your products there? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question. I think it is quite obvious that between the 4 letters of case, or out of the 4 letters of case, the E in general, but especially in China, is the most important one. C also needs to be considered in conjunction with China, because connectivity in China plays an even major role from the point of view of Chinese customers than in the rest of the world. So MBUX was mentioned, which features in our new compact class, and I'm sure it'll trigger very positive responses, especially among customers in China. Well, let's focus on the E, though. So the statement that I mentioned earlier still applies. We will electrify our entire portfolio, starting at 48-volt systems, which enable to recuperate the energy. It moves on over plug-in hybrids with bigger and bigger ranges, and it will end with fully electrified vehicles, battery-powered. By 2020, we will have various vehicles that will cover the entire portfolio. We want to make these vehicles so attractive that more and more customers want to buy these vehicles, and that more and more customers will prefer electrical vehicles to internal combustion engine-powered vehicles. As far as the legal framework is concerned, like, for example, quotas, etc., of course, it is our intention to meet all legal requirements. Okay, two colleagues from China over here, and then next to you.
I'm a Global Times reporter. I have a question for Dr. Sach. How do you predict China's new energy vehicle market in 2018 and 2019? What will Daimler do in China in these 2 years? Thank you.
Danke.
Thank you very much for your question. So far in China, we perceive a very dynamic development indeed as far as electric mobility is concerned, or new energy vehicles, as they are called in China. In China, about 1/3 of our unit sales of our close partners, BAIC and BYD, is done by them. So we know the technology fairly well, and we also have a lot of information about the customer structure in China. I think the share of private owners is not quite as pronounced. As far as our classical customers are concerned, most of them are private customers. However, as I mentioned earlier, well, to make a concrete statement, to make a concrete forecast on further development in 2018, 2019 is well nigh impossible. I can only repeat what you can see in the official papers. Of course, we want to play an important role in this context, but in 2018, we will only be able to go so far because our vehicles, as I said, well, not the plug-in hybrids, but the fully electrical vehicles will come out in 2019 and will be available across all segments in the market. And of course, this also applies to China. So in China, we will also increase our share of electrically powered vehicles. Now, your colleague next to you.
Thank you. From China, I have two questions. The first one is, what position does the Chinese market occupy in Mercedes-Benz future global strategy? The second is, how will Daimler respond to the future opportunities and challenges of the Chinese market? Thank you.
Zu der ersten Frage, Ihr Kollege hat vorhin.
Well, to answer your first question, your colleague rightly stated earlier that last year we sold about 600,000 vehicles in China. On the other hand, globally, we sold 2.3 million. So 25% of our vehicles were sold in China, more or less. We believe that we can tendentially increase this percentage. We have growth targets for all markets in the world. In many markets, we rank top compared to our immediate competitors in the premium segment. So the market momentum of the various markets, of course, is crucial and decisive for our further development. We believe, in view of what I've just said, that our growth momentum in China will be bigger, driven by the market, than in other markets. In China, we are not yet number one, so there is still additional potential for growth here. And as far as our strategy is concerned, in China, we want to offer customers those vehicles that are most attractive among all competing vehicles. Our strategy is clearly based on our products. In addition to that, of course, we will also offer services. Case comes to mind here, and services will become ever more important. In sum total, we want to generate for our customers the best experience ever. We want them to have the best experience also in our sales organizations. That applies to China, including a few specifics that apply only to China and not elsewhere, but it also goes for the entire world. Now, the Chinese colleague who's over here.
I'm from China, media name AutoWiki. It's a great honor to be invited to the Mercedes annual press conference. As you know, the Chinese market has contributed most to the Mercedes global development, but you are facing strong competitors like BMW and Audi. So what do you have to do? The first question. And the second question, there are so many new cars in China, like Master, New, or Baton. So I want to know, what do you think of it? Do you feel some pressure? Thank you.
To answer your first question, at no time we said that our competitors share our goals. We wish Mercedes to be number one. Of course, there is stiff competition, no doubt about that, and I welcome that, because our performance and our ability to perform is also driven very much by the way our competitors challenge us. So competition is something positive. We deeply respect our competitors. We know that they leave no stone unturned in order to get back to the top position, and the future will show who will remain in the lead. This also goes for new competitors, and of course it is quite obvious that within the framework of the spread of electrical vehicles, there's also a new opportunity for Chinese manufacturers because, well, we have 100 years of experience with the internal combustion engine, and it's difficult to catch up on that. It's easier if there is uncharted territory, like for all those who start from scratch with e-mobility. What we've seen so far deeply impresses us. The concept vehicles are truly impressive. Concept cars made by our competitors, and some of them are series-produced vehicles. We will, of course, have to respect these competitors, but as I said earlier, we welcome every newcomer. We welcome the competition because this drives us even more to become number one. Now, the colleague next to you with glasses. Gabriel Wirth, Bayerischer Rundfunk. My question is, how about coming to terms with the antitrust accusations, and how many vehicles are out with the new Euro 6 diesel technology, the temp? And would you recommend customers in Germany, in view of the driving bans, to buy diesel vehicles that comply with the Euro 6 standard? Bodo will answer your first question later. As far as the CLS is concerned, it's the first vehicle that has been certified according to Euro 60 temp. Why not more? This is due to the fact that the final definition of this certification option was not available earlier. Of course, we have a whole range of vehicles, a large number of vehicles that belong to the new generation of diesel cars. And to a very large extent, they comply with this new standard, the new Euro 6 standard, but it hadn't been fully defined at the time the vehicles came out. But their emission behavior is more or less in correspondence with that standard. We talked about the transparency of information earlier. Of course, we are very pleased about the fact that many people who also have a critical view of our industry, that those critics confirm that our diesel engines are clean and viable. This is what our customers also assume, and they trust that at the end of the day, decisions that are taken will be based on logic, and that vehicles and their emission behavior will contribute towards further reducing NOx emissions. They also trust that these vehicles will continue to drive in our cities. But of course, nobody can be 100% sure, but our customers rely on that. Your question, I think, related to trucks, correct? So nothing new here as far as content is concerned. I cannot break any news in this regard. The only thing I can tell you is that we are very professionally working on this. The various functions within our company cooperate very professionally. Now, Mr. Meyer, Süddeutsche Zeitung, and later two colleagues from the FAZ. Hello, good morning. I have a question about media reports regarding works councils, that is right-wing extremist works councils who run as candidates at various plants in March. How do you see that? What do you do? How do you cope with that? Can you do anything about it, or doesn't it affect you? Well, of course it does affect us. It doesn't leave us in cold blood, and of course we are deeply worried about this. We look at this trend with great concern. That much is obvious. And what we do, I think, is what we can do as part of the German society as a whole. That is, we should defend our values. We will defend the values that we deem to be good and right. We will advertise these values, but how can we influence these elections only in concrete terms? We can only ask for a high turnout and invite everyone to participate in the election. You can't do anything else in a democratic system. Mr. Grob, FAZ, and then Ms. Preuss. Good morning, Martin Grob, FAZ. I have two questions now the mic's working again. Mr. Zetsche, you mentioned a high degree of implementation regarding the software updates, and I'm interested in learning more about this. Can you please elaborate? And my second question, in view of the entire situation, what do you think about Wolfsburg? Do you get angry when you think of Volkswagen? Well, regarding your first question, I try to be specific in my statement, and I try to tell you that I talked about the update that was more than 1.5 years ago, and that we did or initiated voluntarily. And of course, we designed the corresponding software at the time. It was the entry-level engine in a compact class, first of all, and then in the V-class. And within the trade organization or the dealer organization, we said that customers should make their vehicles available for this update. And customers did so, most of them. This is what I wanted to say. Just learned that more than 70% of our customers followed the invitation to have their software updated. Well, what I feel is basically my very personal affair. Most of the time I feel good. So I don't think it is my job to judge one or the other competitor now.
Ms. Preuss. Good morning. I'd like to ask for some clarifications. You talked about Diesel Europe, and I'd be interested in finding out whether you can tell us how many units of diesel engines did you sell in Germany, and has the ratio changed? And also in terms of Germany, how much of the overall investments you announced will you be investing in Germany? And then also I'd like to ask a question about the CO2 discussion and the fleet consumptions. Could you tell us the fleet consumption and where it stood last, and what do you do if you should not achieve the threshold 2021, which in view of the great success in the larger vehicles, the SUVs that is foreseeable. And then lastly, could you also provide us an update as to the investigations of the prosecutors in Germany and the United States? Any details you can provide as to, or are there individuals being accused of wrongdoings? Well, I can tell you up front that I will not be making any statements to the last question. We don't have any new information on this. Diesel Europe versus Diesel Germany, I stated earlier already that in Europe, overall speaking, we have seen some slight effects in Germany, France, and the UK. Also in Germany, but only single-digit changes, even though the diesel share in Germany is higher than in Europe on average, and still the impact was very minor. From 16 to 17, that is, and also in Germany, we've seen the share to remain at a constant level over the course of the past few months. Now, as to your question on the CO2 emissions and the thresholds for that, the question is, what will we do should we not achieve the target? The question is, what do we do in order to achieve the target? And for one, we will keep going at full speed in order to offer highly efficient combustion engines and to roll out these engines in our vehicle fleets. So it's a set of 4- and 6-cylinder engines for the gasoline engines and the diesel engine variants. I talked about 48-volt technology earlier. So all of these relate to the vehicle and vehicle drives. All these measures are being taken, and we also invest in additional technologies to be installed in vehicles in order to comply by these thresholds, and the success in the target to comply with that will be made possible by using plug-in hybrids. For instance, that's an important lever. We'll use all levers in our hands with the objective and expectation being to make sure that the limits that will come into force in 2021 will be complied with and abided by. I cannot tell you precisely. It's a very high level, very high value, but I don't have a precise figure. But we will try to see whether we can come up with a more precise figure. But it's a very high share to be invested in Germany, also simply because the share of value added in Germany is very high as well. And we have those 3 regions in Asia and in China, more specifically the US and NAFTA as a second region, but the third region, obviously, and a high share of that applies to Germany, and how high we'll try to be more precise on that. Just to give you a little bit of an idea as to the figure we're talking about here, the share of sales in Germany comes from 9 and is going towards 10%, and I believe more than 50% of that will be invested in Germany. So it's a very strong commitment to Germany and its locations. Now, Ms. Wittenbach of Reuters is next. Thank you. I have a question to Dr. Zetsche. Your target return was reconfirmed at 9%, but you never mentioned the 10% for the passenger car segment again. Are you trying to send a signal to the capital markets that you're now in a phase of the cycle where this two-digit figure cannot be achieved? And I have a question to Mr. Uber on the current negotiations and the one-day strikes in the metal union. Could you tell us which plants in Germany will be affected, or could you tell us whether all the main assembly and all the main assembly plants will be affected by that? And can you catch up afterwards, or is it just to be neglected, or do you believe that there will be an agreement reached shortly? And a question to Mr. Daum. I read a comment by an analyst on the truck division stating that there is a high need for restructuring in your European part of the business. Can you tell us a little bit more as to whether you plan anything in that regard?
Zu der ersten Frage.
Coming back to your first question, during the last capital market day, when we talked to investors, we said that the transformation that our industry is in which we have a shaping and leading position, so this transformation leads to a significant expansion of our investments into the future, and in an early phase, the products that go with that offer a lower contribution margin, at least in the early phases, and that is why our objective is to make sure that the long-term earnings will be in this corridor between 8 and 10%. From a strategic standpoint. Obviously, we'd like to be at the upper end of that range, and I think this intention is very clear to all of you. Last year, we increased our efforts massively in order to get there, and we'll see how we'll be able to proceed in the years ahead. On your question on the strikes. Now, tomorrow, I believe, we will be affected from north to south, pretty much in all the locations of the announced strikes. And I stated earlier that also at all the locations, pretty much, we're producing at the capacity limit. And that is why catching up is very difficult, if at all possible. And that is why this is not a positive development, but irrespective of the strikes, we are obviously interested in a swift solution to this, regardless of how hurtful such disputes may be. On your question on the truck segment, last year already, we initiated quite comprehensive measures and have come quite far. And there was an impact, negative impact, one-time impact in 2017. As a result of that, we'll also continue along the same lines, try to improve our offer on the market, try to improve our processes. I'm very optimistic, and the team is working very hard on that. The team also has my full trust and confidence, and I'm very optimistic that we'll be able to achieve these objectives, therefore allowing us to be able to, again, give a positive impulse to the truck division. So the last three questions, Dr. Röder. Susanne Röder, Globalito Media. I'd just like to come back to the VDA and the ICEA. Now, Dr. Zetsche, you pointed to that, and I'd like to come back to that issue and ask the following question. I think it's a little deplorable if you look at how the different representatives of automotive manufacturers and suppliers act and how different their stands are, really. So what do you as Daimler Group, do in order to make sure that Mr. Mattes can be brought on a constructive path to the future, and how does the VDA link up with you and your position as ICM? Could you say a little bit more about that? Well, I was the head of ICEA for longer than I wished for, and gladly I stepped down last year, and Carlos Tavares took over in January. First and foremost, there is only a limited number of issues we can discuss in the industry coming up with a uniform opinion about that. So that is why this expectation that all stakeholders involved are to pursue in the same direction, that's not an objective that's realistic. And I've been on this job and in this industry for a long time. And I have to tell you that when I look at how constructive the discussions are and have been, I can tell you that the discussions have become more and more constructive over the years. And I can also tell you that more and more European manufacturers, almost all European manufacturers, are now of the opinion that the stronger the automotive industry, the more, or it can only be strong standing together when pursuing the same path, really. The last 2 years have been part of a transformation, a transition, really, and in this type of transition, there might be different focuses taken on the part of certain manufacturers, but I don't see any negative development in the sense of a breaking apart or splitting off of certain groups of stakeholders. I pointed to this in the past, and I'll try to support this in the future in providing as much support in the future as possible, and that the VDA and ICA are not two competing organizations with competing ambitions, but are rather one part of a whole scheme. And I believe that the individuals responsible will do everything they can in order to make sure that we get closer to that. Frank Volker is next. Yes, good morning. You said a few things about manufacturing issues and the utilization of your plants, but nothing on your plant in Mexico. Could you give me an overview of where you're at in Mexico and what the role of the plant will be in the future? And while we are in that part of the world, could Trump's tax reform, in view also of your capacity bottlenecks, result and trigger a new investment in the United States? Well, I could mention a number of plants we did not talk about, so that is why I'm not surprised that we didn't mention Mexico, for that matter. Now, the compact class will be launched in Mexico with two model variants. The plant is in its final stages of preparation for the launch, and as part of the global network, this plant is networked with the launches in other plants at 3 different locations. And in parallel to that, in Tuscaloosa, we will continue to invest heavily. We already talked about the fact that the share of SUVs in the overall portfolio has been on the increase consistently. And this also applies to the GLE, which is what we're producing in Tuscaloosa. And the capacities we can provide for that have been expanded to unexpected heights and unimaginable heights. And of course, there is a limit to capacities at all times. Now, last question. Well, the two issues I wanted to ask about, you actually alluded to a little bit, but I can probably phrase my question in a little more precise manner. You said that every third vehicle is an SUV. And from what I understand, the CO2 emissions of larger vehicles is above the thresholds that will be required soon. Why are you so optimistic you won't have to pay any fines for exceeding CO2 emission limits? And my second question is, this is a statement of financial statements without a balance sheet. Now, if we had the annual report available, what would it say on the diesel investigations in the United States? I think you already have the answer to the last question, and that in 2 weeks from now, On Carnival's Monday, you will have the document available, and you can see for yourself. Now, just take the GLA and the A-class as an example. And when comparing those two, it becomes very clear that the difference in the CO2 footprint is very minor. Just generally speaking, our task is to make sure that every segment solves its own CO2 task and that we don't cross over, basically. In some segments, that's easier. In others, it's more challenging, but that's our approach to it. Therefore, this also applies to the SUVs. Now, just to be more precise, on the 13th of February, the annual report will be available online, so you can read all the details we'll publish on this date. And if you want, also check the risk chapter. And in the risk chapter, we also comment on legal proceedings. So having said that, I'd like to say thank you very much to all of those journalists here in the room, in the plenary. So stay with us. It's a warm room. You can work here more quietly so than in many other places, and we'll also be available for any further questions. And have a wonderful afternoon, a very dynamic Thursday afternoon. Thank you.